powerful eye emerged in the sky. The Supreme Marshal Zhao Jai remained silent, waiting for our boy's response. Shuan and the others began to stare at him intently without saying a word. Despite there being an army of powerful warriors, Lu Sheng stayed calm without losing his composure. Shuan, who had his hand resting on the staff, couldn't help but feel excited. Now that Zhao Jai had personally come to make the army yield, it was time for them to act. His gaze fixed on Lu Sheng, and with an angry expression he decided to properly display extreme majesty. The blue-haired man and the woman started observing Lu Sheng and couldn't help but smile, while on the other side, the blonde-haired man's eyes filled with seriousness. Lu Sheng began to emit a golden aura. He started to gaze at the ground and did not say a single word. The man with blue hair began staring at him, and upon seeing that he was paralyzed with fear, with a smug smile mentioned that they had underestimated Lu Sheng. The body of our boy began to tense up, causing a drop of sweat to appear on his cheek. With a lost gaze, he started looking toward the ground. Seeing this, the man's eyes filled with excitement and he couldn't help but smile. Now that our boy's courage had broken, killing him was going to be a piece of cake. The woman, who had one hand resting on her waist, extended the other to the side, began observing Lu Sheng, and with an arrogant smile explained that when the martial saint was present, even the entire military department had to bow, and even the 5 marshals had to lower their heads. For this reason, it was normal for our boy to be afraid. A smile spread across the man's face, thinking that Lu Sheng was nothing compared to the martial saint. At that moment, someone struck a staff on the cloud to draw everyone's attention. It was old Shuan. In front of them stood Lu Sheng. Shuan rested both hands on his staff and fixed his gaze on Lu Sheng. Seeing this, everyone else started staring at him in silence, waiting for old Shuan's order to attack. Lu Sheng didn't even lift his head. The mockery was consuming his mind, and instead of responding, he simply clenched his fist tightly. The blue-haired man began to move his finger in the air, making blue lightning appear, and his gaze fixed on Lu Sheng. With an arrogant smile, he asked how Lu Sheng dared to resist. He used his power and summoned a sword made of lightning. He gripped the hilt tightly and couldn't help but feel excited upon seeing that Lu Sheng was a very interesting person. The eyes of old Shuan filled with seriousness, and with a serene expression, he gave him the order to kill Lu Sheng as soon as possible without damaging the reputation of the martial saint. Powerful thunder appeared around the man's body, and his eyes filled with excitement. With a confident smile, he asked old Shuan not to worry. At that moment, he gained momentum and leaped. In the blink of an eye, he appeared above Lu Sheng, gripped the sword tightly, and with an arrogant smile prepared to attack. His eyes were full of determination because he believed that even if he returned to his normal state, it would not take him more than 3 minutes to kill Lu Sheng. Lu Sheng raised his head, and as he was slowly approaching to attack, our boy simply stood silently. An excited smile appeared on his face, revealing that he was not trembling with fear. Just before the man could attack, Lu Sheng moved at the speed of light, and in the blink of an eye, cut his body in half. Seeing this, the man's eyes filled with despair and confusion, not knowing how this was possible. A powerful golden aura appeared around Lu Sheng's body. He clenched his fist tightly and his eyes filled with happiness, making a smile appear on his face. He was so excited that his body couldn't stop trembling. The man was known as Blue Dragon. His body began to fall toward the sea, and with an expression full of fear, he couldn't help but wonder how Lu Sheng could be so strong. Old Shuan and the woman who were atop the cloud started watching the fight, and upon seeing that Blue Dragon had been defeated, they couldn't help but go into shock. The gaze of old Shuan filled with rage. He began to release a powerful energy, and with a furious expression, he asked how Lu Sheng had dared to hurt Blue Dragon. But just then, Lu Sheng ascended to the cloud where old Shuan and the others were, and while his body was surrounded by golden lightning, he moved at great speed and appeared behind them. Upon sensing Lu Sheng's presence, they couldn't help but go on alert and feel confused at the same time. The eyes of the blonde-haired man filled with confusion, and with a worried expression, he began to turn around without knowing what was happening. But it was already too late since our boy had already cut off his head. Lu Sheng moved again at great speed and, using his power, dislocated the necks of old Shuan and the woman, causing their eyes to fill with fear and confusion. They could not believe that he was so strong. Lu Sheng cut off old Shuan's head, and the arrogant smile disappeared from his face as he was consumed by despair upon realizing that he had been decapitated. The heads of old Xuan and the others began to fall into the water, and it was then that they realized how terrifying Lu Sheng was. After beheading so many subordinates of the martial saint, now Lu Sheng had his hands stained with blood, revealing that if they waited for the supreme martial saint to act personally, there would no longer be an opportunity to kill him. Lu Sheng was confident, and a proud smile appeared on his face. He mocked them by saying that they should hurry and attack without holding back. The 22 immortal cells within his body were shining intensely, the path of killing and the breath of wind were at maximum power. Now he was in the state of War God, Dark King Divine Sutra. Upon seeing this, the eyes of the Eastern Marshal filled with fear, and he could not help but fall into shock. Lu Sheng's murderous intent could be felt from afar. He couldn't believe that he had eliminated all the experts from the Supreme Dojo so easily. The Marshal of the Central District began to observe Lu Sheng, and his eyes filled with surprise and fear. He could not believe that this was the true strength of our boy. The marshals who were by his side could not help but feel afraid. They were all shocked at the power of our boy. The lifeless bodies along with the decapitated heads of old Xuan and the others fell into the sea, staining the water red. Despite having his body cut in half, Blue Dragon was the only one still alive. His eyes filled with despair, and as his body slowly sank, with a desperate expression, he began to scream and call for help. The Marshal of the Central District began to observe Blue Dragon with a serious expression and could not help but be impressed upon seeing that out of the 4 extreme symbols, only one remained alive. The others had been cut into pieces, creating an infernal scene. With an uncertain expression, the Marshal who had a scar on his face mentioned that according to logic, a Grand Master had vitality far superior to that of ordinary people. Even if their head was separated from their body, they would not die completely. The attention of the Northern Marshal focused on Lu Sheng, and his eyes filled with seriousness. The murderous intent flowing from the wounds was dense and pure, capable of destroying even the vitality of Grand Masters. The eyes of the Marshal standing beside them filled with surprise, leaving him in shock. He could not believe that Lu Sheng was so powerful. As the body of Blue Dragon was slowly sinking into the sea, he extended his hand toward the sky and with a desperate gaze began to plead for help from the martial saint. Zhao Jai, who was flying, remained silently thinking without doing anything. He raised his head and started staring intently at Lu Sheng, his eyes filled with rage. He could not believe that Lu Sheng had dared to kill his subordinates. He transformed into a powerful flame and began descending rapidly toward Blue Dragon. He placed one hand on his shoulder and grabbed his arm with the other hand. He started looking him in the eyes and promised to save him. Seeing this, Blue Dragon's eyes filled with hope, believing he would not die under Zhao Jai's protection. But everything was going according to Lu Sheng's plan. In the blink of an eye, he appeared and firmly grabbed Blue Dragon's head. Zhao Jai's eyes, who was trying to save Blue Dragon's life, were filled with surprise. He couldn't believe that Lu Sheng was so fast. Lu Sheng tore off Blue Dragon's head, causing him to start bleeding from his mouth and eyes. His eyes were full of fear. He couldn't believe he was going to die in this place. Blue Dragon's blood fell on the martial saint's face, leaving him in shock. Just as he was about to save his subordinate, Lu Sheng had taken his life right before his eyes. Lu Sheng appeared in front of him, started staring at him intently with a piercing gaze, and, with an arrogant smile, mocked Zhao Jai by saying that he had already killed all his dogs. The words of our boy began to resonate everywhere, enraging Zhao Jai. In the blink of an eye, the sky filled with black clouds and thunder. Seeing this, both the Eastern Marshal and the others were in shock. They couldn't help but panic as they knew what was about to happen next. The Marshal of the Central District began to observe the thunder, and his eyes filled with surprise. With a serious gaze, he thought that Lu Sheng was truly crazy. Blue Dragon began to lose his life. With tears in his eyes, he questioned why he had to die in front of the great Supreme Master of the martial path. Zhao Jai clenched his fists and began to fly. Blue Dragon's eyes started to close. He couldn't understand why not even the Saint of War had been able to save him. His lifeless head fell into the water, and Lu Sheng, who was beside him, clenched both fists, and with a serious expression began staring intently at Zhao Jai. The martial saint was consumed by hatred and lost his composure, causing his entire body to begin emitting a powerful golden aura. He clenched his teeth tightly and could not avoid feeling rage. He used his power, and in the blink of an eye, the sky filled with golden magic circles. 2 hands began to emerge from the magic circles. It had been almost 100 years since someone had made him this angry. He extended his hands to the sides, making a large golden circle appear behind his body. A powerful warrior emerged from the circle and began roaring. His power was so intense that even the sea started to stir. Lu Sheng clenched his fists, started observing him, and began releasing blue energy. An exciting smile appeared on his face. The power of Zhao Jai was capable of making even the martial saints feel fear, but Lu Sheng acted as if nothing happened. With a smile, he raised his middle finger and mocked the martial saint, saying that he did not have a good temperament. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.